Hi everyone. I'm continuing my videos about my experience with the ring cycle that I recently had the opportunity to see at Kennedy Center performed by Washington National Opera, and this video chat is going to be about my experience with Die Walküre, the Valkyries, which I saw on Monday, May 2nd, 2016. Here's the playbill. Performed by Washington National Opera, and I saw this at the Opera House at the Kennedy Center. Here is the cast from the production that I saw. I'm not going to go through each one just to save time. The conductor was Phillippe Auguin, and the director was Francesca Zambello, which I've mentioned in the previous videos if you've seen those. There was a substitute for Brünnhilde on the performance that I saw. The Brünnhilde listed here, Catherine Foster, she actually did go on to sing Siegfried and Götterdämmerung, The Twilight of the Gods, the last two operas, but this particular Valkyrie, she had injured herself, and so she was replaced by Christine Goerke. Hope I pronounced that right. Goerke is how you spell her last name, so apologies if I've mispronounced that. She substituted at the last minute, and it was divine. She did such a beautiful job, and she sang that role so amazingly. I mean, I don't have a lot to compare it to since this is the first time I'd actually heard this opera sung live in a live performance. I have only heard it in recordings and on streaming video previously, but anyway, it was beautiful. So she did a beautiful job. And I realized it must have been really difficult to walk in at the last minute and take over that role in this production. So anyway, we were fortunate enough to have her for this performance for Die Walküre on Monday, May 2nd, 2016. So, having said that, so what's Die Walküre about? If you're not familiar with it, where we left the previous opera was Das Rheingold, and where we left that off, the gods had, through their arrangement with the giants, managed to get Valhalla built, and they had, as the opera was ending, they had moved themselves into Valhalla. Where we pick up in Die Walküre is much time has passed, actually, and Wotan has been busy in the background. He has realized in Das Rheingold, of course, he lost the ring. He was forced to give that up to the giants, and so Fafnir wound up with the magic ring and the Tarnhelm, and still has it when we enter into Die Walküre. But in the interim time, Wotan has tried to think of a way that he would be able to get the ring. He knows he can't do that by the universal laws that he himself has created, so he can't go back on that. He can't unweave that web he has woven, but he can find someone who can, and he has decided the best way to do that is to create he has favored a certain family. He has actually fathered children with a woman who I don't remember if her name's ever even mentioned, but when we enter in the Valkyrie, these children have been born, and there were a set of twins we find out that were born, and their names are Sigmund and Sieglinde, and they are twin brothers and sisters. So when we start the opera, we find that Sieglinde was basically given away. She said this horrible life. She was given to this like brute as a wife. She lives in the middle of nowhere in this house with a tree in the middle of it. So Sigmund happens across this. He's being chased by people because he's sort of a heroic type. He has tried to save a woman who's being forcibly married off, and he's wound up there and at Sieglinde's door, and she takes care of him. Of course, she fears her husband because he's such a mean brute, and his name is Hunting, I think, or Huntig. Sorry, I'm probably mispronouncing that too, but he is not there at the moment. So they They meet over the course. They realize that they seem very familiar to each other, and they have this bond. And ultimately, they are sort of basically instantly love each other. They do realize they are brother and sister, though. That doesn't bother them, so they run away. And they are chased by her husband at this point. Well, back with the gods, Wotan, of course, has... Oh, I should say, before they leave, there's this magic sword that Wotan has, years before, stuck into this ash tree that is in the middle of Sieglinde house, because he has visited there unawares. No one knew who he was, and he did this because he knew that this, it would be there when Sigmund eventually comes along, and only he can pull it out. Everybody else's try is sort of the sword in the stone kind of thing, where only like the chosen one or the hero can pull out the sword. And so Sigmund is able to do that, and then they leave. Wotan, of course, is going to be in battle with, he's being chased by the husband. Fricka, though, is the goddess, Wotan's wife, Fricka, is the goddess of marriage. So she is appalled that this brother-sister duo is in their lovers. And so she she sort of stresses that her power has to be respected, and she upholds marriage and tradition, and so Wotan is not going to be allowed to save Siegfried. And so, to make a long story short, Wotan ends up having to agree to that. Well, Brünnhilde is one of the Valkyries. She's a daughter of Wotan, and the Valkyries are these women, sort of warrior women, who gather heroes on the battlefield for Valhalla and bring them to Valhalla. So she's kind of Wotan's favorite, and so she's hanging out with Dad, and Wotan tells her, you can't help him. You can't help Sigrid, because he's going to have to stick with what Fricka said. And he realizes this upsets him, but he has to do it. And Brünnhilde's like, what? She doesn't agree with that, and she knows that that's not what he wants to do. But she does agree to do it. So she goes to the battlefield, and she's going to prepare to take Sigmund, because he's going to be a hero, so only heroes can die and go to Valhalla, hero warriors, and she knows he's going to die because Wotan's not going to protect him. She's been forbidden to protect him, and so she goes to collect him and take him to Valhalla. He flat out refuses because he says he chooses humanity. He's not going to leave Sieglinde because he loves her, and he realizes that by going to Valhalla he will have to leave her, and he refuses to do that. Well, as it turns out, Sieglinde is pregnant already, but that becomes more important later on, of course. Anyway, Brünnhilde realizes, so she gets so moved by the love that they share with each other, and his heroism and his devotion to her, that he refuses to go to Valhalla. He chooses to remain human and accept whatever happens to him, rather than abandons his lover, sister, and he won't go. So when push comes to shove, she actually protects him. She goes against Wotan. Well, Wotan's there with Fricka kind of overwatching, and he shatters the sword, and Sigmund is killed by the husband hunting. I'm not saying his name right. That's going to bug me. Let me look up and see what his name is for sure, because that's not going to fly. Hundig. I know it was close, so Hundig. So anyways, he's killed by Hundig, and at the end of the opera, then Wotan has to punish Brünnhilde, and he ends up forcing her to sleep. She loses her immortality, and she has to sleep on, she is put to sleep on a mountaintop, and only to be reawakened in the future by a hero. And originally it was going to be just whoever came along, and she begged Wotan to at least let it be a hero. So he asks the fire spirit Loja to surround her with fire that's only a hero could pass through. And so Wotan agrees to do that, but they end up having to part at the end of the opera. So my experience about the opera, I'm going to run out of time if I'm not careful. So a couple of things I wanted to bring up. First of all, this sword in the middle, this tree in the middle of Siegelinda's house and Hundig's house. This is so operatic. I thought about this when I was watching the opera because there's this tree in the middle of their house. I was like, okay, well, we have a tree with a magic sword in it. But, it's so operatic. And another thing is she starts singing to Sigmund about the sword and how only someone heroic can pull the sword out. I swear it's like 30 minutes of opera, of singing about the sword and pulling it out of the tree before he actually pulls it out of the tree. And I amused myself so much like watching this opera and experiencing this opera whenever. So I was like, that is so operatic. I mean, yeah, granted, he could go up and yank the sword out of this tree in 1 second and then the story could progress, but that wouldn't be opera, and that sure wouldn't be Wagner opera. So as it was, we really, really feel that sword, and we really, really feel him pull that sword out of the tree when he finally does. And we get a lot of poetry around the sword, and I think it was just beautiful. So I loved that, but I did get amused by that. And then another thing I wanted to bring up about just the experience of opera itself in general is this opera has the very famous Ride of the Valkyries music in it that probably everyone will recognize if they hear it. But it was so cool to hear this, to hear the Ride of the Valkyries in context, hear it performed live first of all, and then hear it in the context of not just this opera, but in the operas to that point. So, we'd already seen Das Wrangel, so it was a continuation of that story. And that was just, it's hard to put that kind of experience into words, but that was an experience of hearing the Ride of the Valkyries. I've heard the Ride of the Valkyries in one way or another in my entire life. It's in movies, it's in, it's everywhere. I mean, it's one of those things that you hear commonly, but I had never quite heard it in this way, and I never quite experienced this way before, so that was new. And then finally, I wanted to say before I completely run out of time, just this ending scene, my experience of that ending scene where Wotan has to kiss away Brünnhilde's immortality and she becomes human. He has to do this because he has to uphold the universal law as he sees, as he's basically as the gods have created it. So they have to part, and that was such a human scene. Even though they're gods, this was so human because they both ultimately. He tells her what her fate's going to be, and she starts trying to bargain with him to change it. And that's exactly what happens to a human when they realize that something's happened, like they got a deadly disease or a loved one, something happened to a loved one. They start bargaining with the universe. At least let it be less, let it be this. And Brünnhilde does this. At least let it be a hero. If I'm going to have to be human and I'm going to have to follow whoever wakes me up, at least let it be a hero. And it just breaks both of their hearts to part with each other because they loved each other so much. They were family, but ultimately they did have to let go of each other, and he has to walk away from her forever and never see her again, and she will never see him again. And they realize this. So to me, that was such a beautiful. It was such a beautiful take on such a human, even though these were gods experiencing this was so easy to relate to as a human, losing someone you love and just like realizing that you've got to let go of each other because you're never going to see each other again. And this not necessarily death, but, just people who have to part for whatever reason. Sometimes this is just the way things worked out, friends even, where you have to let go of each other because you each need to go in the universe, the fate, whatever has determined that you weren't going to be together anymore. You needed to part, and how heartbreaking that really is. So that was beautifully done. That was my takeaway. It was at the very end, and it was just so beautiful. And I had not experienced that when I had seen the streaming version of The Ring a couple of years ago. So this was just so meant so much to me, and I would love to see that experience that again at some point. So I think I'll let that go. Stop here, and I will be doing a quick video on the next opera, Siegfried, and that will be coming up soon. So stay tuned for that. Thanks. Bye.